Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review House of Gucci. So, the one immediate thing that I will say for this film, if I have never seen Michael Keaton's The Founder, I would like this movie a lot more. But I had already seen that movie, and so once I've seen that movie, I can kind of go on and just be like, oh, I can kind of see where this is going now. Once we start getting the ball rolling, so to speak, on this film. And then it just becomes like, oh my god, so this is going to be a slow slog of a thing. Now that I know what the gimmick is, what the idea behind the story is. And it's hard for me to say, like, negative things about this movie simply because it's based on a true story. It doesn't matter if any number of these people are all dead at this point and like going on and just having my own kind of conundrum about grading a film that of course is based on someone's actual life. It's hard, but still, with that said, I have to treat this like it's any other film. And so for me, I would say this is a interesting movie, but that kind of falls really just in between. Like, I would say that this is interesting enough to deem it to just be an okay film, like a light okay film. Because I can't call this a bad movie, but I feel like it's so boring. It's a boring slog of a film to where once you start to see where the ball is going to roll with this movie, you're like, oh, okay, well, I know how all this is going to go. And then you just get really bored with this film. And it just comes down to just boo-hoo crying and everybody kind of going on and eventually seeing things stolen from out from under them and so on and so forth. But again, I feel bad going and saying that, but it's like, it's just how the story is broken down. So please, anybody, anybody who has any ties to the Gucci family or whichever, hey, like, I'm just being honest about this film. Nobody come at me, bro. I'm just being honest. So I like the early stages, the romance between both Patricia and Maurizio. Am I saying that correctly? I might be butchering some names down the road here, but it is what it is. But the further and further we go on along in this film, the more and more I have to fight my interest to stay upon this film. So with that said, let's just go into that double five time territory. This movie has to just be deemed to be like a okay to interesting kind of film. But again, like, if I've never seen the Michael Keaton movie, The Founder, then I would be like, ooh, this movie is interesting. But because I feel like the Michael Keaton movie, The Founder, like, actually can hold my interest where this movie can't. And it's almost the same thing. So let's go on to that double five time territory. Let's just go into spoilers. I'm not going to go in once we get to spoiler time. I am not going to go on to do every single bit of this film. I am going to go through the broad strokes of it, basically meaning I'm going to go through the big events in this movie. I'm not going to go through every second to second little thing because why? I just don't have that in me to want to go through every single tiny, minute, specific thing for this review. I just, like, really, if I were to take 2 hours worth of time explaining this whole entire rigmarole of film, I just don't think it'd be worth it. I just don't. So, with that said, where can you go to find this film? Right now, it's currently on a premium access or some kind of access on Vudu right now, VUDU, I would tell you to go out of your way to Google search an app called Letter C Movies. So a letter and then a word. You can go on and search for this app, download it, and it's been something that I've been using fairly reliably for a number of months. And so download that app. You'll be able to see possibly House of Gucci, if not more of other things, upon that app. New releases, shows, tons of stuff you wouldn't be able to see anywhere else. You could also, where I really watch this film, you can also download an app called Fox HD Movies. The logo will say so, but the title will say something different. If you Google search this, you'll go and find an app that says Play 1080p HD Movies. And so, I've gone on and searched Fox HD Movies, downloaded that app with the logo that says so, and you'll be able to, pretty much with a combination of both those apps, be able to see whatever you want, anything at your leisure. There's sometimes where you can go on and exhaust the engine, and eventually you'll find a unique, beautiful snowflake that neither one of these apps have, because you just have unique tastes. You can also go onto a Google Play Store and download the app called TV Crush. Any of all of those. You can go on and eventually find a movie, find a show, find a something or other. So, with that said, let's go on into spoilers. Let's go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time again to spoil this movie. So, very beginning of the film, we of course have Patricia, who is going on to some club, some party, and she, of course, is bumping into Maurizio Gucci. So we kind of have this thing to be, like, set up how, like, Gucci is to go on and be this guy who's riding this bike, and he, of course, is to have this Gucci belt on him, and so on and so forth. And so it seems that Gucci is to go on, or Maurizio is to go on to this party. That's where I'd want to just start this film. So we, of course, have Maurizio that bumps into Patricia, and she immediately thinks that he is some server, and so he's asking her, or she's asking for a drink from him, and Maurizio is going on and it's like, well, like, I'm not the actual bartender here, but hey, I'll fix you something. So we go on later on, after both of these two have gone on and danced with one another. We later on have Patricia that was to go and find Maurizio at this bookstore, and so it seems that Patricia is to pretend like she's reading a book so that way she could just get with a Maurizio. And so it seems that at first all of this is good and innocent and whatever, and she just bumps into this guy, and she is to, of course, see that he has a motorcycle of sorts. And so Maurizio is to go and put her phone number upon this guy's motorcycle windshield. So, because we have it to where this girl really is interested in this guy, but we never know completely what her complete intentions were from the get-go, because I'm assuming that this girl seemingly had innocent thoughts and then was to go on, and we can kind of have the idea here if, like, maybe this girl the whole entire time was going and thinking like, oh, heck yeah, I know who this guy is because he says this magical word, which is his last name, and oh my god, yeah, I'm going to figure out how to get to that guy because we kind of feel like that for the rest of the film. So we have Patricia that is going with Maurizio, and so we go on and we have things going so well that Maurizio is taking Patricia to his father, to Rodolfo, butchering names as we go along here. Rodolfo. What? So we go on and we explain to, of course, Maurizio's father what Patricia's family is to do for money. It seems that Patricia is to have her dad own some trucking business, and so we of course have Rodolfo, who is saying like a trucking company, like, so this girl doesn't have money, kind of thing, because we have it to where Rodolfo is going with Maurizio and pulling him aside. It's like, you know what? I think that this girl is just to want to get her hooks into you and squeeze you for everything you're worth. It may not seem like it now, it may not seem like it later, but that day is probably coming. And Maurizio's like, no, like, this girl, like, no, like, I think this is all good and innocent. And so Maurizio is to go on and pull away from his father, so much so that Maurizio is like, you know what? I'm not gonna live with you. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna share in your wealth. You can cut me off, whatever. I don't care. So we go on to Maurizio meeting up with Patricia's family. And so Maurizio is confessing to Patricia's father that's like, well, sir, I'm here saying that I have nowhere to live and I have no job, and I love your daughter, and I am going to at some point marry her. And so it's like dropping this big massive bomb because this guy has not really yet met this guy, but he just feels so strongly that they're like, okay, all right, uh we'll just kind of we'll bring this guy in, like he'll work with this truck company, kind of doing this kind of small job. So we go on here, and so we of course have Maurizio that seems to be the happiest that he's ever been, kind of working with his trunk company, and that's of course his wife's, his future wife's. So we go on and we have this couple who I guess is kind of stealing away some time together to just go on and be passionate towards one another, let's just say. And so we push on in this story, and we of course have it where it seems that Patricia is to go on and want to figure out some way for Maurizio to be good with his family. Maybe if it's not his father, maybe we can go on and figure out some other family member that that Maurizio can be good with. To where we go on and we of course have Aldo Aldo Gucci, who is to be Maurizio's uncle, that is calling one day and wanting Maurizio to come to his place for his birthday party. I guess his 70th. And so we go on and we have Patricia that is to uh, push Maurizio to go to this place. And so he goes. And we, of course, have Aldo, who was to find out both Patricia and Maurizio were, of course, to be married without the Gucci family present. Hence why Aldo is to try to call to get Maurizio to come to his birthday party. Because it's like, hey, like, you guys had gotten married, and I'm sorry that none of the Gucci family was there, because it seems that Rodolfo, when Aldo is to make it to Rodolfo and is to talk to him and just be like, well, hey, like, what's up with Maurizio? Like what's going on there? And Rodolfo is just like, well, hey, like me and my son had a falling out, and so Rodolfo's like, hey, like, no, like, come on, like, this is a good guy, like, he's a good kid. But it's no, it's more than that, because we of course have Rodolfo who's saying to Aldo, it's like, well, your kid's a moron, like, your kid's an idiot, and so, like, what are you judging me about kids? And Adolfo's just like, well, no, but, like, he's a good guy, so we go on and we have Adolfo, who's, of course, to bring this couple to his birthday party. And we have Aldo, who is convincing Maurizio to, of course, come with him to New York. So, really, Maurizio can work with Adolfo. And Maurizio has really no interest. He's just like, no, like, I just came to this birthday party. It's all I want to do, yada, yada, yada. So we go on to have Patricia that, of course, is to seduce Maurizio into going to see Aldo. And so the more and more Maurizio is to hang out with Aldo, it seems that the more and more we have it to where Maurizio is to be involved in this company, or to just kind of take on certain jobs and kind of work his way up. So all of a sudden we go on and we have Rodolfo that is starting to get ill. Of course, Maurizio's father that's starting to get ill. So we have it to where, of course, there is a child being born by Patricia, and so they are to go on and name this kid after Rodolfo's wife that had passed away. And so since Rodolfo had found that out, he's like, oh my god, like there needs to be more women in this world. And like, luckily there's a woman who's named after Maurizio's mother. So we go on and we have Rodolfo, who is forgiving Maurizio for all that they've done, and it's like, well, hey, like, since he's dying anyways, like, just like hand over the fortune, kind of thing. So cue us going to Rodolfo, and he's dead, sadly. We go on and we have supposedly all of the inheritance supposedly going right to Maurizio, but we have it to where I guess Rodolfo wasn't to sign off on all this will, and supposedly he's going to have to do a inheritance tax, which is, I guess, to be really heftily substantial, which is like $14 billion or something like that. And so we of course have we of course have Maurizio that's like, dude, I don't have that money. Like, there's no way. And they're like, well, you could probably sell off your shares. And he's like, no, that's the one thing I don't want to do. So we go on instead have Patricia that is realizing that it's only a signature, right? Like, basically all he has to do is sign away this thing and just give them the money. All it took was a signature. So we go on and find that this woman had gone on and fraudulently signed this man's name so they can easily get the inheritance. And wouldn't have somebody have known that? Wouldn't somebody have checked on that? I don't think a dead man's signature would. But I guess that's just me. So we push on and seem to have everything going well on the Gucci side, so to speak, the Maurizio side of things. And so we more and more have Patricia that's talking to Aldo, and it seems that Patricia is to go on and start to haggle with Maurizio, just be like, you know what? I don't know if we can really trust your family members anymore. Like, I don't know if we can trust Aldo. I don't know if we can trust uh, Paulo. I don't know if we can trust him anymore. And Maurizio's like, what? Like, it seems they're really good people. And Patricia is like, nah, I don't think so. Where is this coming from? So all of a sudden it's either Patricia or forcibly Maurizio once Patricia has done something. Then all of a sudden things start to dwindle and dwindle down to where all of a sudden we have Patricia that's going and talking to Paulo and is to go and find out that he is to have some dirt on his dad. Convincing him, it's like, hey, like, you need to be your own man. You need to, like, uh, you need to feel freedom. You need to go on and you need to, get to be your own man. As Paulo is going and having certain designs and wanting to put forth his own Gucci thing, where we go on, we have him try to do some fashion show, and that all gets freaking killed simply because he is to have a copyright problem. And Paulo is like, wait a minute, copyright? Like, I am the copy. Like, my name is Gucci. Like, what? I don't get it. Like, what's the problem here? And so, because we have it to where Patricia is telling Maurizio that this guy can go on and try to put out his designs because they'll never see the light of day. So, really, they're just kind of giving this guy this leash to eventually hang himself, sadly. So, but Paulo is to give Maurizio these tax returns that Maurizio is to realize because he's a lawyer, or that he tried to be a lawyer. He realizes that there is to be fraud going on in these tax returns, and in this kind of accounting error kind of thing. So Maurizio goes on and is telling Paulo that Aldo probably won't get significant jail time for this, but he probably will get some time, a real slap on the wrist and whatever. And so all of a sudden we have, of course, Aldo, who is to be arrested for this and is to be put away for like a year in time. And so we turn around and have Maurizio that eventually is to ask for Paulo's shares, one way or another. Eventually going on and buying him out for how much money he is to be just blowing. So we go on further and further into the movie, and we of course have Paulo or Aldo after he realizes that Paulo is to sign over his shares. He's like, "Oh my god! Like you've killed me! Like you've buried me!" Like that was the only thing that like they had against, of course, Maurizio was those shares, those just shares, because really Maurizio has like the controlling um, amount for this company. So like he has majority whole sharehold of this thing to where he can make all of the decisions, and that Aldo is just buried simply because Aldo wanted to go into certain directions, and Patricia and Maurizio were just like, I don't really like that. Because they go on and they find, like, Patricia finds out that there are to be some knockoff Gucci things that are to be sold at some flea market somewhere. And Patricio is to tell Aldo about that. And he's just like, what? Like, no, that's fine. Like, I don't care. Like, they're going to make their money. And so what? And so we have Patrizio or Patrizia that is talking to Maurizio and like telling him it's like no, like they're disgracing like the Gucci name by putting this product out. And so after that, that's when Patrizia is going and talking to Maurizio, saying like, "Hey, like I don't like your uncle anymore. Get rid of him, basically." Figure out a way to just get rid of him somehow. So further and further we go on, and we have Maurizio that is to now go to these guys. I believe their name are the Royals, but we have Namir uh, Kidar Kirdar Kirdar. I don't know how exactly perfectly that's pronounced. So if I'm butchering that name, I'm sorry. So we have Namir, who is to go and talk to Maurizio. If we could have just one easy name for me to have to pronounce through any part of this movie, I would be internally grateful. just like let it die now. So just give me a break. So Namir is going and talking to Maurizio, and Maurizio is wanting to uh, have Namir buy the rest of the stock from Aldo so that way they can have control of Gucci. And it seems that Maurizio is having so many problems with Aldo and Paulo anyways, to where it's like, you know what, I just don't want to deal with these people anymore. I just don't want to deal with them. Because it's funny how Maurizio is to mention that he really isn't a Gucci. He's just Gucci by name. Um, and that basically his blood is to really be from his mother, which is to kind of like, which is to basically kill off any of the Gucci blood or the Gucci thing that's inside of him. So Namir goes on and is to go and get the other share from Aldo, as Maurizio is to be on, is to show up at this signing, and Aldo is to just be so upset by the fact that he is to be swindled out of this money. And so we turn around, and after that big deal is to happen, we go on, and we are, of course, to have uh, Maurizio that is more and more just maybe like in his brain he's just kind of upset about all the things that had happened with his family and all the stuff that he had to do after the fact, when Patricia would just go on and on and on about like, okay, like we're gonna go and we're gonna do this and we're gonna do that, and she honestly did a lot of things without telling Maurizio about it, or she honestly did a lot of things behind Maurizio's back, and then he found out about it later, and then he was like, ooh, like I guess now I have to act upon this because like that's what she wants, I guess. So we go on and further have it to where Patricia and Maurizio are to start to slowly but surely separate. Because all of a sudden Maurizio is to see a woman who is to go by the name of Pola. Pola? Well, I guess it's the almost exact same weird name as uh, is Jared Leto's character. So I'm gonna go with Francie. Frenchie? Francie? Ballparkingly, hopefully saying that name correctly. And it seems that we also have Patricia that is going and meeting with a girl named Pina. Or Pinna? Who is, of course, being this fortune teller, who's to be this tarot card, 1-800 Call Me Now If You're a Free Reading Girl, where we have Patricia that is going on and calling this woman late at night saying, like, hey, like, what is the case of my fortune? And so it seems that this girl is to tell her all the things that she's ever wanted to hear. We all of a sudden have it to where this girl is to latch on to this woman and is to want her to consistently tell her fortune, because it seems like she is to be told really good things for the most part. So we go on and we have Maurizio that is going and skiing and is bumping into this girl who is to be called Francia. Or Francia. Francia. I'm going to go with that because it just sounds better. It's probably not the way it's pronounced. So we go on and we have Maurizio who is hanging out with this woman, and Patricia is starting to see what's going on here. That it seems that that Maurizio is kind of looking at this girl like, like we're old friends, like I've known her longer than I've known Patricia, and so like something seems interesting. Something seems interesting here. So we have Maurizio that's trying to pursue that, and we have Patricia that's going to this woman and is saying like, well, hey, like you shouldn't try to steal things. Like I'm trying to teach my daughter that you shouldn't go and steal things from other people. And maybe that's telling you something, right? That you shouldn't be going and trying to steal from other people. And so we go on here, and slowly but surely, we of course have Frenchie that is going with Maurizio, and eventually he is to be seduced by her, to the point of finally Maurizio is to go on and say like, okay, Patricia, let's call it what it is. Really, we cement that at some Christmas, at some part of Christmas. So technically this is a Christmas film because you have Christmas for 2 seconds. Hey guys, House of Gucci is a Christmas film because it has a Christmas tree in it. I don't get why that always is, where it's like you have a Christmas tree in a movie, all of a sudden it's a Christmas film. It doesn't make sense. Because I guess since that's the only holiday thing that's in there. Oh, it's a Christmas film, even though it's Technically not, but it is what it is. So weirdly, I love to do movies that are to seem like Christmas films, but then they aren't. I love those. So, so we go on and we have it where we finally have it to where Maurizio is to, of course, want a divorce from Patricia, and he doesn't even give her the papers himself. He has someone else go on and give these papers to her, which of course is to be Del Soleil, Domenico de Soleil. If I can get a easy, if I can just get one easy pronounced name, I'd be so good to go right now for this film. So we go on and have Patricia that's realizing that this fortune is slipping throughout her hands, and so now she's just getting more and more upset, trying to figure out a way to re-win Maurizio back by just saying like, well, hey, our daughter misses you. Maurizio's like, well, like I saw her like 2 weeks ago. Like, what? Like, what do you got? Maurizio is just like, well, hey, like I'm financially like I'm covering both you and our daughter, so what else do you want? And Patricia is just like, well, I want it back the way it was, and Maurizio's like, I'm sorry, but that's just not gonna work for me. So we turn around and have Patricia that is to go into this way of which to want now Maurizio assassinated, killed, murdered. And so we of course have Patricia that is going and having Pina Salma Hayek's character go on and hire two thugs to murder her husband. And I know I'm basically jumping the gun on a lot of stuff, but there's a lot of stuff that I honestly like passed in between those times. I don't really care to cover. Like I can go on and mention that Maurizio is going and talking to certain designers, like a guy named Walter, and Walter is to say that Maurizio, like he doesn't really like his brand. He doesn't like where his brand is going. We of course have one designer who is to try and swoop in and is to try to resurrect Gucci to a much more promised land like thing, and yada yada yada. I could go on about that, but I just don't want to. I just don't want to take that time. Sorry for anybody if I'm gonna just not give them their time in the sun, but I want to quickly wrap this up. Also, I just don't want to take that kind of time. So sadly enough, like because I think we had like Tom Ford that I think was to be this like redesigner who is trying to go on and resurrect Gucci at some point. And it seems like they were going on and doing this lavish show. They're like, oh my god, yeah, this is great. And so we turn around, and then all of a sudden we have Namir, who is to have this designer have this big lavish like praise and from some newspaper somewhere, and so he walks off. So Maurizio is going on, and he of course is to sit down at this table, and they're going on and telling him it's like, hey man, you are really just blowing money. Like you are really just you're lavishly spending a lot of money on stuff and writing it off as some like company expense. Like at some point, like you need to like be able to afford to run a company at some point also. And so Maurizio is like, well, like, so what are we talking here? And so we go on and we have these guys who are going and saying, like, well, we want to buy your shares. We want to buy you out. Like, that should more than enough, like, cover, like, a lifetime of whatever you are going to need. I'm like, oh my god. So these people are sweeping in and buying out Gucci completely to where there is no longer to be one Gucci name really tied to this company. I'm like, oh my god, that's got to be freaking awful. Uh, so we of course have it where Maurizio is to have one guy ask about this meat that they are serving, and they hear what exactly this meat is from, and so Maurizio is to take this plate and chuck it onto the ground. And so I don't quite know if he exactly signed that paper or not, but you would have to naturally assume that that's where that is going to go anyways. We had it to where Maurizio was to also confirm to these guys supposedly that all of those expenses that he had done was for all good reason. Like, I'm assuming they were probably to be some tax write-off, but still, this guy is bleeding money out of this company. So now we have it to where Maurizio is to make it out of this place and to go on and bike his way to getting assassinated, murdered by two men. Well, just one man that was to shoot him multiple times and then drive off with some other man. Men. Duo. So Maurizio is to of course get shot multiple times, then is to fall over. One guy is to come out with his baseball bat to be like, try to scare these guys away, but he just ends up getting shot. And so these guys drive off, and so we have Patricia that is going and talking to, of course, Francie, or Frenchie, and she's telling her to leave this penthouse because Patricia is to own all of this. Because I'm assuming we have it to where Maurizio had put a number of things in his will, and so on and so forth. So both Francie and Maurizio had never gotten married, so I'm hoping that Maurizio just kind of put everything in his will to his daughter. I'm hoping, but I don't know, not quite sure. So we go on into this story, and we also had it where Namir was going to have a CEO of the same guy who was to go on and give Patricia like her divorce papers. And Maurizio is like, man, you work smooth. When he sees this guy who's all of a sudden working his way up the corporate ladder. But it's like, hey, like when really looking at it, there's so many chess pieces, and there's probably so many things moving in place, and we can really see how some people are to like, hey, I'm going to get my money, and then all of a sudden you end up seeing like a person that's like, well, I'm going to get mine too. Like, I'm going to get mine too. Like, wow. So, to really just see the cutthroat business of every corporate takeover or whichever, it's just like crazy just to see how something that was really yours and how a big massive thing it ends up becoming, just to have somebody just swoop in and just like, yeah, that thing, like, can I just yank and take it out from under you, and you're like, oh, what? So yeah, that's a crazy story, but that ends up being what it ends up being. So with that said, uh, really, like, I think that's all that I want to go on and talk about within this film. A 2.5 hour movie that I condensed into 45 minutes. Really, that's how enthused I was about this film, to just kind of really get it out and to finish it up. Some people would go on and say it's like, well, wish you could have been a lot more specific about a lot of these other things. Let me know in the comments below how you felt about House of Gucci. If you went and saw it yourself, if you went on and you hated it, if you went on and you loved it, maybe you said that this is the best movie of the year for whatever reason. I can completely understand that. For drastically different opinions, because there's always to be that person that, yeah, this is the worst movie that I've ever seen this year, and someone is saying, no, it's the best movie, because people always have the drastic different opinions and whatever. Like, I can just go on and just say, like, well, like, then maybe you should be a reviewer. You should just be a reviewer. Because, hey, like, if you have a different feeling about something, and, like, very rarely do I ever have, like, a huge, massive positive, like, yeah, about a movie. A lot of times that I would go on and very rarely praise a film. So, really, for this one, like, for me to say that this one is an okay film, or barely okay film, or just interesting, but it's also like a bore of a film, and it shouldn't have been 2 hours too long, or 2.5 hours. So with that said, I'm going to get out of here. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody. One thing, a rebuttal, because I feel like after, like, going into this, I didn't really mention how Patricia went to jail for the murder of Maurizio. I didn't mention that because I'm like, should I mention it? Does it really matter? Because it's like the obvious thing that eventually happened in this film. Uh, really, we also had the moment where Patricia was going, and after she was to spend time with Aldo, it seems that Patricia was trying to spend more and more time with Aldo, and trying to go on and talk to both him and Maurizio to kind of try and work things out. But we have it to where I think Patricia is to put words in Maurizio's mouth, like saying it's like, oh no, I think he really wants to go and work things out and be with his family and so on and so forth, where Maurizio had no interest in that. Maurizio was just like, no, I'm fine where I am at, I'm already happy, and so on and so forth. But Patricia is to consistently convince Maurizio through seductional ways to do things, and if at first it didn't seem like a work, I think the further and further that we've gone on to have Maurizio kind of tear apart his family is to realize it's like, man, like, maybe my father was right. maybe, like, maybe I was, like, maybe I was seduced by love. Maybe, like, I realize now that I've gotten everything that I've technically, I guess, wanted, now maybe I should go on and find what I really want. How I'm going to be the most happy, and how I'm going to be with somebody that's happy with where I'm at, so to speak. So, with that said, yeah, I think that's all I have to say about this movie. Hopefully that's it. Hopefully there's no rebuttal. But we go on and we have Patricia that goes to every one of these people, even going to Paulo and trying to figure out how she can kind of work him over, to just be like, ooh, well, I have something little I have a little something against my father. It's like, ooh, like, so Maurizio and Paulo are going and having the secret meeting, and while Paulo is fencing, and so Maurizio's like, ooh, like, I guess this is to be really fraud, and turn around, and so then Paulo is to feel betrayed by Maurizio, and he goes on and is to just slowly but surely lose all his money to where he can barely keep his mansion afloat. His big, massive house afloat, he's having problems. To where Aldo is to just be forced to give up all of his shares to keep his life afloat also. So, yeah. So with that said, that's all I want to say. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.